New year, new video, am I right? So much time has passed from the last video that I've cut my hair and it's already grown back. But that's not what this video is about. It's about which car I chose based off the criteria I presented in the last video. So I'll be talking through the decision I made, some of my test drive experiences, and what you might want to consider. Let me talk about why it might be especially hard to choose an electric vehicle. It's kind of like going to a restaurant of a culture of food you've never had before. It's already hard enough to choose what you want from a long menu, throw in some foreign words, new ingredients, and different preparation styles, and it's just a mess in terms of how much time you might need to choose that menu item. Now, I think the same is somewhat true for vehicles. There's so many different body types, styles, features that we can consider in a standard vehicle. It makes choosing an electric vehicle that much more difficult. And partially that's because we don't have any benchmark of what to compare different EV features to if we've never been in this space before. Hopefully in this video, you'll get a sense of what the range of ranges are, charging speeds, and different factors that you can consider when choosing your vehicle. So if I were to take us back in time a bit and present to you the three categories that I talked about in the last video, they were broadly the electrical system, technology, and financing. There was a breakdown of each, but we'll go through some of the detail. Now, obviously, to be honest, this is a more structured way of looking at things. I was not this structured when I made my initial buying decision, but learning from that, now you can use it as a tool to ground yourself in your decision-making process, understanding that there's always a bit of emotion at play, and you'll see that in my decision-making. So let's jump right into the table and look at all the cars that I was considering. What we have here is listed in alphabetical order the cars that I test drove, along with their type, either being electric or plug-in, the body of the car, which is SUV, compact, or sedan, the price, range, and charging speed. As you'll remember from the last video, range and charging speed are two of the important factors I listed in electrical system. There's also another consideration, financing, that is not included here because the financing changes quicker than the weather, so you can update the pricing to reflect financing available in your region, but is not in this current sheet. Now, before I dive into some of these numbers, I want to give some overall impressions. The first electric vehicle I drove was the e-Golf, and this was a great experience. This is really what gave me the thrill and more interest in electric vehicles. I remember walking back into the dealership with a big smile on my face because the drive was just so much fun. Ultimately, the car isn't that fast when I think about it. You just feel that much more connected to the vehicle when you can put your foot on the pedal and it accelerates right away. So that was definitely one of my most memorable experiences. In terms of the Teslas, the Model 3 and Model Y, two cars a lot of people will consider, the technology was really impressive. It even was able to see a trash can on its Tesla Vision. But I think that for 80-90% of the driving I do, I wouldn't use most of these features, whether that's being able to see trash cans or the video games that are available. Some standouts I want to point out are the Hyundai Kona. This was after test driving about 5 or 6 EVs already. This one really surprised me because it was sporty, it had good technology, and it seemed like a really practical car. So I really walked out of that experience with a positive view of the Kona. And then there was also the Audi. This was the first car that I felt, when it got to higher speeds, still had that quick acceleration. A lot of EVs, as you get to higher speeds, you'll feel the power drop off, but the e-tron really still had that pickup. And then ultimately, the BMW, surprisingly, it doesn't look like it, but it still felt like a BMW. It had that fun acceleration and that tight handling. So if you're a fan of BMWs, I would suggest you try it out. Now, let's dive into the numbers. When you consider all these factors, there's probably two ways you'll think about them. Some thresholds and then ranges. When we talk about thresholds, they're just some things that we rather not put up with. And one of those things for me was when deciding between electric versus plug-in. Now, electric cars are known to be a little cheaper to maintain and be more environmentally friendly. In terms of the cost savings, they're not huge. They're around 30 to 40% because there's a certain amount of fixed cost that goes into owning a car. But I found that when you consider the plug-in range, it's usually 5% of the car's total range. So if you compare that to 100% electric range for an electric vehicle, you can see that you probably will have more environmental benefits. On average, it seemed like you would be about 75% better for the environment than versus a plug-in car. So ultimately, that's what I chose. So the first filter here will be electric. In Canada, in terms of the price, you have to be less than $65,000 to actually qualify for a few government incentives. And I definitely didn't want to pay more than that much for the car. So the next filter I put is less than $65,000. And then there was also the range. Pretty regularly, semi-regularly, I would make commutes around 100 kilometers or 60 to 70 miles. And I didn't want to have range anxiety, which a lot of people talked about before getting my first electric vehicle. So for me, I wanted to have a car with more than 200 kilometers of range. Now, this is the list of cars that we are going to consider. And each of these should get a score for either the price, range, or charging speed. Each car will get a score between 0 and 10. Whether it's the worst in that category, it'll get a 0. If it's the best in that category, it'll get a 10. And this gets updated based off the filters that I applied. How we combine all these scores together is based off a multiplier, or how important each category is to me, in order to calculate a weighted average. Now, the multipliers are 5 for price, 3 for range, and 1 for charging. At the time, I really wanted to help the environment, but not have to break the bank doing so. So price was the most important for me. Range was also pretty important. Again, I had concerns about range anxiety, so I gave this a 3. And then finally, charging. Because when we think about the 0 to 80% charging, you will differ between cars from 25 minutes to do that to 45 minutes. I didn't think that 20 minutes was a huge difference. It might be a bigger factor for you, but I put it at 1 for the multiplier. Now, putting all these together, you see the final scores from highest to lowest. You'll see that the Kona comes in first, EV6 comes in second, and the Polestar 2 comes in third. However, one thing to note is actually when I was making this decision, the EV6 that was available was either the highest or second highest trim and was way more expensive than this. It sat around $62,000. And that's why it got bumped down a lot. So these are the cars I was considering. But when I think back, as I alluded to, many decisions are a bit irrational. Although now I think price would be a 5 for me, at the time I was probably considering it more like a 10. And this is why the e-Golf ended up way higher on the list for me. You might think that based off this list, I would choose the Kona Electric, but ultimately I ended up going with the e-Golf. There are just a few more technology features that I appreciated, and I just like the styling of the e-Golf, so that's what I went with. But that's actually not where the story ends. I bought this car around the beginning of COVID, but then later on, I actually moved and needed to drive further distances. Pretty regularly, I'd need to make that 100-kilometer commute. Doing it both ways, and then also factoring winter driving, and then also knowing that range estimates are usually higher than what you get in real-world driving, I decided that my new range cutoff would have to be around 300. Also, during this time, the used car market was pretty high, so it was a good opportunity for me to trade in and get a car with longer range. For my second decision, it's the Kona Electric, Polestar 2, then the Mustang. And again, it might seem like I should choose the Kona Electric, but spoiler, once again, I chose a different car. the availability of the Kona was low, and mostly because I liked the Android automotive integration and thought it was a good balance between price, range, and charging speed. I ended up with the Polestar 2. Roll the clip. Based off these objective criteria, you can start to consider what are the top 3 vehicles you should consider. 80% of the decision might be objective, and then the last 20 is maybe a little subjective. And I'm saying that's all right, because ultimately what we want to do is be able to follow our passions, do what makes us excited, and make the decision that feels good to us. There's a certain aspect that you have to trust to your gut and trust that you know what you want. When I look back at it, I think maybe I should have chosen the Hyundai Kona Electric. And to be honest, I would have been really happy with that choice, but I followed my gut and I'm still extremely happy with my decision. Polestar has served me well, and I look forward to it continuing to do that for years to come. I will share the sheet. Hopefully it's helpful for your decision-making process, the things to consider, what ranges you should be looking at, to get you into the right headspace to know which cars you should consider and which ones you definitely should not consider. And ultimately, the rest is up to you. If you found this video helpful, more than the like and subscribe, what I'd appreciate is comments. Tell me what you're looking for. I'm still trying to figure out who you are, what you want to hear, and how I can be helpful. So feel free to leave a comment down below so I can make content that's useful for you. Ultimately, that's why I want to do this, and I want to continue to journey with you in this EV technology experience, whether you're looking for your first EV or looking for your next one. Be sure to get yourself in the right headspace, then follow your heart. So that's it from me for now. I'll talk to you in the next one. See ya.